Okay. Okay. So, hello. One moment. Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Happy Tuesday. Before I invite our guest speaker, Dr. Abram Milton, for our community conversations, just a quick announcement that this Thursday we actually are holding a special QPR for the African American and Black community on Thursday, July 23rd from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And this will be taught by our amazing instructor, Dina Robinson, and co-hosted by Beth Boyd. So there are still some spots available, and please find the link in our bio, or the flyer is on our page as well. So without further ado, I am going to bring in Dr. Abram Milton. Hello!
Hey, hi, how you doing? Yes,
Good. How are you, Dr. Milton?
I'm doing well, doing well. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. We've been planning this for like
I know
feels like forever, so I can't
it
believe
seems
we're
like it, right? Right? Everything that's kind of going on, and know we having a busy schedule, both of us. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much, and I can't wait to learn from you. So let's jump right in. And for
Okay.
everyone who's joining, you know the drill. Just send in your questions in
Yeah,
the
definitely
question
seeing
box.
questions. Yeah, we love questions.
Exactly. So if you don't know how to send it in the question mark box, you could just send it in the chat, and Dr. Milton will try to get to as many of those as possible in the end. And I'm sure that he'd be happy to connect even outside of this IG Live.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So can you please start off with just sharing a little bit about yourself?
Oh yes, definitely. Hey, for everyone, thank you for coming out, especially during this time. I know some of y'all got a lot of busy schedules. So, one thing to talk about a little bit about me. Right now, I'm a staff counselor at California State University out in Northridge, and during that time, my primary focus is to see the different students within CSUN as far as mental health support. But one of the things that how I met with Yasmin and for some of the others is about a lot of the outreach that I really love to do, and that's one of the main reasons why I took that job is some of the supports that I provide students in relation to populations with Black males or just people of color in general. There's things I work with the liaison roles within the Muslim and Islamic students and some of those different associations veterans, right? Big, heavily populated as far as support for the veterans and within the student athletics. That's just the name of just some of the ones that I was excited. Uh-oh, she fell out there. Hey, we're gonna have fun times today, but yes, we have those different roles, right? But before CSUN, I had served as an active duty Marine for over 20 plus years, like 23 years to be exactly, and was in communications during that time and transitioned into the world of clinical psychology, which I know we'll speak on later on about some of my topics of interest. So, with some of those things, that's my background. I love kind of the topic, expressing about mental health and seeing how we can help others.
Yeah, wow. I don't know. I don't understand how you do so many different things. Like you're
Very
one.
carefully, very carefully, right?
Yeah, so that's just amazing. And as like a Muslim individual, I appreciate that you go out there and try to support our community as well.
Yeah,
And
yes, definitely. Yes, I mean, what I've always found is no matter which place before here, I was working at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And one thing I always found out is that, yes, within the university counseling environment, students can and they do often come up, but a lot of times you get to meet people where they are. When I was in the military, well, we called it like trooping the lines, where you go out. how are you going to find out about people? It's by reaching out. So a lot of times, to some people who are CSUN students in general, one secret to my success, I go out and meet people where they are, and that's usually where you get seeing where people really are, need to be met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. What did you say? Trooping out?
We call it trooping, like troops trooping the line.
Oh.
So so a lot of times, people are out, taking care of things. And me as one of the senior leaders, I used to go out and check on their welfare and their health and see what's going on. And sometimes it's getting out into those locations because that's how you're going to find out, not just sitting
Mm-hmm.
back, right? And just as with mental health, if we are sitting back, we may not see because some people it's really hard to come in to seek help within any place. I know you know that even within NAMI, that
Mm-hmm.
outreach that you do is so important.
That's so true. And I feel like it's especially hard sometimes during this pandemic, but even then, like for those of us who do have access to Wi-Fi and devices,
Yeah. So
it makes.
even these situations like this and doing these Instagram is still reaching out, right? Meeting a
Yeah.
lot of people where they are, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
expecting them to try to connect into NAMI, reaching out, and then we seeing the people. So I'm glad that y'all are doing these kind of talks.
Yeah, thank you. And so moving on forward, can
Hmm.
you, before you share a little bit about your personal journey through this career, can you just
Uh-huh.
share like a couple of fun facts about you?
Oh, okay. Fun fact: some people may not know about me is I'll say this one. Yes, I love anime. To say that is, somebody may get in the conversation and I can go to deep kind of conversations with them, which some people may find surprising. One time I was doing a workshop and this one student had mentioned about I think that character called Naruto in anime, and then I went deeper and I said, okay, what do you know about this one? And kind of going no conversation. So I love those kind of things. Other interest, I see a lot of hearts. People love anime. Hey, that's what helps me. Like doing this time when I'm sitting at home and feeling like,
Mm.
right. So some of that. I also love martial arts. Kind of I know I've been doing that for years. A lot of things, with especially like with Tai Chi and some of the more relaxing stuff, and then some of the more structured things as well. Those are things like me. Love travel and love exercise. I think some people who know my page or do that stuff, you will see a lot of different kind of mixtures of things like that. So those are some of the kind of like unknowns that some people may not know within my job, but that
Mm.
I enjoy.
I love that. And the reason I wanted to put that out there is because I think sometimes we can forget that the helpers, the therapists, the counselors are also humans too. And,
Uh,
you know,
Absolutely, right? There's plenty of things I do, in addition to helping support the clients and doing the liaisons. Hey, I have to watch for my own mental health, right? And my
yeah.
own kind of stability. So there's so many things I talk about. I make sure I practice for myself. I mean, because it
Mm-hmm.
can work to find some peace of mind.
Right. So thank you for that. And then, do you want to share a little bit about your personal journey for our
Oh,
audience?
yeah. So as I mentioned when we first came in, for me, my journey, like switching over to the mental health field, is as I mentioned, I initially started off active duty Marine back in '93, had joined up, and then at some point within my career, we know with a lot of things that were going on within the world as far as deployments, combat zones, and things like this. I would say probably, I want to imagine it probably had been like 2003 or so when the spark started coming in about interest about switching from military to mental health. And it became with an initial interest about post-traumatic stress, how it was affecting individuals. But one thing back then when I was looking is I wasn't just looking at some of the male veterans. I was curious about some of the female veterans that was also coming back. And during that time, there wasn't a lot of research besides some people that were first responders. You're talking about nurses, doctors, and others that were in some of those combat zones or within some of those support realm. Support meaning the people who were doing the convoys, where they was driving the vehicles, support because those locations were also being potentially attacked. So I was also looking at that to see about what was going on in relation to people, how they were, the onset of post-traumatic stress. So from that, I started to, try to pursue my undergraduate degree. And then from that, they just kind of spilled over into this just interest in mental health because I always found that no matter where I was going, even in my military career, people, it always seemed like I was open and receptive to talk and communicate and to be aware of people's kind of intuitive feelings.
Mhm.
And so at some point, I had, I thought that at some point I was going to retire the Marine Corps just with my graduate, master's degree and then just do that. But then someone had sparked in my ear about the doctoral program, and I hadn't even thought about doing that. And he said, you know what? Maybe I can try, and so then I applied for that, got accepted, and then went on that journey. And I find it so fulfilling because how it helps now because seeing another veteran or seeing even like a man of color, right, as a male, kind of going about that representation and how that means for some people.
Yes. It's like I'm so happy that you took that journey and that you're here now,
Yes,
doing so much for our people of color, especially when the times are just really tough.
yeah,
So,
yes. All right. When we know there's so much going on and people having many different mixed emotions, the stuff that's kind of going on TV and stuff. I mean, since COVID and all this stuff started, and then when in May, when a lot of these things came in with some of the current social political, is that I have been trying to do as many presentations and trying to get out and get on different panels to try to assist because we know we all got to help each other on this one, right? So that's why I'm glad, like I said, I was glad I was able to connect with NAMI and see some of these things right now because just getting out because a lot of people are in their homes and maybe not knowing who to reach out to, who to talk with. So I'm glad at least that these spaces that they could say it's okay for their feelings.
yeah, exactly. And if anybody who's watching right now, if you want to be involved, if you want to share your voice, like connect with us because it really does take all of us. And
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One thing I always tell people is sometimes it's when they have these initial emotions, right? I see some people, they'll come into my office initially and they'll say, hey, I just want to make these emotions stop. I want to make this pain stop. I want to do this, right? And I'm saying, okay, humming this, dumbing this, stuff like that. Hey, I wish I could just say that the pain can go away. But a lot of times it's not about making the pain go away. It's just validating and processing it because we have emotions for a reason. Our
mm,
emotions are telling us things about ourselves, right? And so we need to just be able to listen in, right? And to these things, and then that can help us get through them because it's an alert system, right? It's just like a car alarm and stuff like that, right? Car alarm. Sometimes a car alarm may have a false alarm, or it may be an actual thing, but it's up for us to be able to at least
mm.
acknowledge it and look at it.
Oh, I like that. I haven't heard it in that way.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I have a
always
whole
like,
spiel. I have a whole other spiel about the whole car alarm thing, but that's a different. That's probably for a different time. But yes, right. And we seen with that car alarm too, right? We have the button that we can control it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right?
Easy to forget. It's like
Yes.
sometimes you could just get consumed with I am the car or like I am
Yes.
my thoughts and
Right. Right.
I agree.
Exactly.
You gotta feel it to heal it. So
Hmm.
thank you. Let's see. Oh, and then can you also share like what does mental health mean to you?
Oh yes. So mental health means for me is I'm a real big proponent of what we call like identity development about like who am I, right? And we do that for a lot of people as they're going through their mental health, a mental health journey. Uh, uh, Yasmin, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Oh,
you.
okay, sorry. Okay, so sorry about that. No, as some people are going through their mental health journey, that they ask that a lot of times it starts off with that initial question about who am I? Because a lot of times maybe society, parents, or what have you, they kind of defined who we are, right? Or maybe give us suggestions. But it's so beautiful when I'm working with clients when they come when they start finding out who they are and being self-accepting and that it's being okay. To even within this stuff with the COVID and these other things, saying this is who I am. I may need support. I may need help, or I may better help others. And whatever it is, it's okay. So when we talk about that mental health journey and what it means for me, it's about that understanding of self with all its strengths and the growth edges, and just be accepting, right? Because we are human, we are human. I make mistakes every day and stuff like that, right? But just to be accepting.
Mm-hmm. I love that the way you kind of define mental health for you. It's very
Hmm.
validating. And I'd like to also shift gears towards like why you think that mental health is especially important in the Black community.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah, definitely. I feel like mental health is important within the Black community because I had put up some numbers I wanted to share with you. I know that some of those organizations had did mental health in America like in 2014, and they looked at the overall population within for Blacks and people of African descent, right? So they have found that in the U.S. population in 2014, we was roughly about 13.2% of the U.S. population had identified either Black or of African, descent, right? Now, out of that 13% or so, right, what they found is over 16% of those individuals had a diagnosable mental health, illness or disorder, or was suffering from some kind of mental health. Now, that's 16% that maybe that went to the professionals. We don't know about how many more, which I'm quite
Mm-hmm.
sure is more, right? And so within this, if you kind of calculate that, that's almost like 6.8 million people, kind of Black and African descent, right? That's almost combined with that number. That's the combined rate of that kind of Chicago, the city of Chicago, Houston, and Philadelphia, just with population. That's a lot of people dealing
Mm-hmm.
with mental health. So we're talking about within Black or African American, ethnic groups and stuff like that, is knowing that we need to have this support. A lot of times, I know I've been in other talks where we talked within medical or mental health fields that a lot of Black people or people of African descent felt like they couldn't go into mental health areas because they say, "Hey, I don't. There's not a person of color that looks like me. They won't understand
Yeah.
some of the things that I've went through." I've seen students when they see me come up, right? If they also are Black African descent, and when they see me coming to introduce myself during that intake, right? And they just give you this
Mm-hmm.
kind of look, and you don't even have to say, but you know what they're thinking. It's about this kind of sense of relief, but that maybe, right? Because we
Yeah.
know within our settings, everyone, the counselors are there and they can support, but sometimes some people want to share with somebody that can, when they talk about different experiences in life, that may have a general, idea. Everybody's different. I can't just assume that I know everything that every Black or student of African descent come to my
Mm-hmm.
office. However, but also about there's some shared kind of experiences that can build that connection. Because I think within any therapy, no matter what race or whatever kind of thing like that, gender, what have you, is that connection is so important initially than all those things.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And can you share a little bit about, like, for someone from the Black and African American community, if they are looking for a therapist, what are some good questions to
Oh,
ask?
no, no, absolutely, absolutely, right? So, it's funny you mentioned that, and I always like to kind of click up because this went off with this one thing I was kind of telling before, as far as students, right? And what you are speaking to is what I like to talk about in relation to cultural humility, right? And this is one thing about whether it's a therapist or a medical practitioner or somebody that you are working with, right? Is understanding about how can they help you. Sometimes I know in this one book I was reading that sometimes people may not question authority figures, meaning like if you're going to see a mental health professional or a doctor, medical provider. Some people may have hesitations about asking questions, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
need to sometimes explore that. Is that because of cultural things that you had learned around home and things like that, right? Sometimes some people won't even notice this. I've had students that maybe they'll be in a class and they want to ask questions, but they're so afraid. And I pull back and ask them about how they were raised and things like that. And what they find is that within the home environment, right, they didn't ask questions, or in their high schools or schools, the teachers told them, hey, be quiet, don't say anything. So
Mm-hmm.
it's quite natural, even to when they're getting want to seek help.
Yeah.
Can I voice my stuff, right? And it's not a sign of weakness, it's just that about how we've been initially trained. But
Mm-hmm.
if we do feel comfortable about asking those questions, you know, some of the questions that we can ask is, first off, hey, have they treated blacks or people of African descent? You can ask that question. I mean,
Yeah.
you can tell another black person because that shows about how what kind of experience they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can ask them about their cultural sensitivity training, right? I would love if the students ask me these things, right? And it just not only about black and African, about whatever kind of population, because you want to know if you're getting someone that can understand your what you're going through, right? One good question I like to ask is, how do you see our our cultural dynamic in this room, right? How do you see that influencing treatment, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
right, because we're getting very interpersonal because we just can't imagine like if we are sitting. I always ask this for all clients: what is it like for them to be in this room, right, with me and kind of stuff like that, and talking about the elephant in the room, me being a black male or being a male or being or whatever. Yeah, kind of breaking that up because what that does is that gives permission to have the conversation. That shows that I'm willing to have those kind of conversations, right? And then you can finally you can ask them about how will you integrate my cultural identity and my beliefs into my treatment plan. It's a lot of people don't think this, but it's totally okay to ask these questions. If people are having hesitations with answering those for you, you might want to be kind of it's your money and your kind of thing about whether you want to see that person or not. Because if they can't have those challenging conversations with you, then how will we have that connection?
Exactly. Like how can you be vulnerable if you like, and go within yourself if there's just that block? And
Yes, absolutely.
and these are really helpful questions. Like I've never been told that. Like this is the first time I'm ever hearing that this is even a
Yeah.
possibility. Because I mean I've gone to a lot of therapy in my life, but I
Hmm.
wish that they kind of there was some guide.
Yeah, yes. Well, it's funny, and I'm glad you asked that question. On that. I mean, that was very important because a lot of people assume that they're getting that they can't ask questions. I welcome the questions, right? And it's not like people are, especially during that intake. It's not like people are asking questions because sometimes in therapy we want to make sure it's focused on the client. But an
Mhm.
initial point about talking about building that rapport, to ask these questions because you're trying to see about the best fit. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't work, that we can adjust. It's okay, like because much as I would love to say that everybody that has come to see me that well, I had to be able to have the perfect rapport and everything went on, but sometimes it may not work out. But that's okay. My main thing is that they get the help, and I
Yeah.
want to help them, even if that is a referral or a transition to another provider that can get it. Because ultimately, it's about helping them, not about
Mhm.
my ego.
Yes. Wow. That's true. I mean, even when I was in the counseling program at CSUN, I just, a part of me in the beginning just wanted to click with every student of every background. And then I had to realize
Yeah,
that it's not about me. Like,
right.
it's
No,
just
no.
sometimes you just,
Yeah, when you can come to that thing saying, hey, that if we keeping it on the client and about their needs, right, and knowing about as therapists, kind of within our ethics, I was saying about knowing our limitations,
mm-hmm,
working where we can, but knowing ultimately focusing back on the student, on the client, on whoever is coming in your door. Even if I'm doing presentations and stuff like that, about knowing the audience and ultimately focusing on them and not on me. I'm just kind of that venue that just went to school and just learned some facts that I can help, evidence based that can help me present. So even by asking that question, hopefully that some people know now that yes, you can ask questions, you can welcome, and then also if the people are feeling like they're trying to scattered not to answer the question, that's going to say something about the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Abram. And let's see. Ooh, can you talk about how we can dispel some of the myths and start the
Oh,
conversation? Seek help?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. To dispel those myths, especially within the Black and African, African American community, or just any community, right? Is these kind of talks like we're doing here about some things. What I always kind of tell people is that we have to get out and advocate, whether these different outreaches, about the social media platforms, about just normalizing and saying it is okay to have these conversations, that seeking mental health support is not a sign of weakness or any kind of things like that, right? It actually shows a sign of strength. I know it almost has become cliche, but it's so true. But with some people, what they don't realize is about how sometimes their deep rooted shame, right, affects them reaching out. And
Mm-hmm.
where did that shame come from? Was that something that was verbalized or not verbalized within family or friends or within television, right? So I'm telling you just to say that to have these kind of conversations. So we have these conversations possibly with family, right? We have these conversations within school systems. We have these conversations within social media. We have them on this Instagram. We have them within whatever kind of groups to go out and just have the conversation, and then that can help destigmatize, right? What would it look like if showing that within television or whatever, right? I'm so happy that sometimes we see people that will share their stories, and then
Mm-hmm.
you still see that they're promoting. I know a little while back when you had did the one talk, right, and we had the one influencer online, and he had mentioned about his journey, right, and I have
Mm-hmm.
quite a few friends, and about how inspiring that is to see people saying, you know what, I sought help, right,
Yeah.
because like I tell some people, right, when we break our leg, we break our leg. Do you ever say I'm a broken leg? Do you ever hear anybody say that? They say I'm a broken leg if they break their leg. No, right? If somebody say has a cold, do you ever hear them say I am a cold?
No.
No, right? But a lot of times what people do, right, we'll put I am to mental health things.
Yeah.
So when we put that I am, it gets to that kind of say, hey, I think therefore I am. But no, it's not that that you are these things, it's that you are suffering from them. And we know with suffering through mental health, different kind of things, that we can walk with a professional to treat it.
Mm-hmm.
That it has to be long lasting, right? So sometimes just changing the verbiage in itself can do so much about the awareness. So I always tell people it's not I am depression or whatever stuff like that. No, I'm suffering from depression. I'm suffering from anxiety. I'm suffering from mental distress, because with some of that stuff, now we can see it for what it is. It is something going on that I can treat and manage and deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, right,
So perfect. Okay, I'm gonna.
right. And like you mentioned, Yasmin, like about that thing. I love how you use that analogy talking about those. Some people take 10 years and stuff like that, right? Delays, and that's what we talk about. That in the midst of that stigma and working on that. So with these things that NAMI continues to do, is I love how NAMI, since I know them from back in the day, always bringing this awareness, just trying to say it is okay. It is okay. It may take years, but I'm gonna keep preaching this. Keep saying that it is okay to seek help, right? Because we've tried the other way, that didn't work. Maybe we need to try something else.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And everyone's on their own journey. And we just have to, I feel like, keep just planting those seeds, sending that message because that's, it's just we need to do it. And
Yes.
so thank you. And I know we're at the half hour, but we can go a little bit over if
Oh
you're
man,
okay
time
with
flew
that.
by. Yeah, yes, I'm okay. The time flew by. My goodness, hey, having so much fun. I didn't even notice that.
I
Yeah.
know it just flies by like that, but I'm going to ask just a couple more questions, and then I see one in the chat box. And in this meantime, if anybody else wants to throw in some questions, feel free to, and we'll just kind of do a lightning round of a few. So much to learn.
Yeah.
So, ooh, can you talk a little bit about the, well, which one do I want to ask? Oh, I wanted to hear your thoughts on like what would you advise to people who are feeling very drained and heavy by everything that's going on, for those of us who are a little bit more on the sensitive side, like
Okay.
how, yeah, any advice?
Yes. So definitely great question. If you are kind of, because of so much that's going on, right? We need to realize and really pull back and understand about stress, distressors in relation to anxiety, right? So what I mean by that is that our brains, that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system, we are keyed in to going about threats. So social media, news, all this other stuff, they know that, right? And so what
Mm-hmm.
do? They put these shocking things that draws our attention. Sometimes just being aware that those things are doing that, and that way we can kind of mitigate how much. I ain't saying totally turn off, but we can kind of mitigate. Apps like I don't know if some of y'all heard about it. COVID Coach was made by the VA, and that has many different resources on it that are talking about coping, free mindfulness, and all those kind of things like that. So, it's called COVID Coach. Is a
Mm-hmm.
good app that you can use in the moment. Obviously, you can, if you're one of the students at CSUN, you can talk to us. You can reach out to NAMI for some of those workshops. If you look on Psychology Today, you can find a therapist and things like that. So a lot of times it's just that initial acknowledgement that it's okay not to initially be okay, is that one message and say, I can, reach out to someone and it's saying whatever I'm feeling now, this is a normal thing because this kind of thing has not happened to us, in no time. This is kind of unprecedented, since like the Spanish flu and
Mm-hmm.
on, right? So it's okay. We all getting stressed, but obviously helping each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that reminder because I feel like something I hear a lot is like, oh, I should be more productive, or I have all this extra time,
No.
but
Right. Yeah, because with all that stuff that's hitting us every day, it's stress, and that stress is gonna wear us out, and that's where that tiredness and some of that stuff is coming on because our fight or flight response is hyped up right now, and so what do we do when we finally sit down? Our body's tired because we're feeling jittery. So that's
mm,
where that stuff about journaling, exercising, some of those other things can come in handy.
yeah, absolutely amazing.
Mhm. Oh, okay, great, great question. Hey, I know. I mean, I thanks Dr. Whaley for coming out. Yes, within this thing, as far as for some practitioners, for some of you who may be on here and wanting to know about within the Black and African American community, I think there's plenty of what we call CEs, continued education, where we can have some of these talks to learn about kind of effective ways about there's certain different kind of research, kind of articles, right? Because what a provider doesn't want to do is have a client in the moment and use the client as a means to try to teach you about right how to deal with a certain kind of population, right? When we're doing that stuff. So obviously to understand our potential limitations, but then also to go out and to continue to reach out, whether that's consulting with a colleague, doing the continued educations, or whatever own kind of self-study. So that's a great question. So I do that all the time for myself, right? Because I can't, even as a Black male, I can't just assume I know the whole Black experience. I know my experience, different for others.
The poor connection.
Yes, man. I don't know
Can you
if I
hear
had a
me
delay.
now?
I'm not hearing. Okay, okay. Yes, I can hear you. So you said, I see one question. I can't see the whole thing. Let me see if I can pop it up. Or can you read it to me? There was a
Yes,
question.
I can't see all of it, but it says, what steps do you think we can take as a community to address mental health disparities in the Black and African American communities to dot, 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 but I can't see.
Okay. So it was saying about what how we can address the disparities. Okay, great. No, great question. So within some of the stuff like locally, I love how NAMI is trying to directly focus on blacks and students of color and things like that. So when we're talking about some of that internal advocacy is just seeing within your local communities what programs are there to voice to be a ally to assist, saying, hey, what are some of these local communities or what some of these local programs are doing to promote some of that stuff? We're talking about that advocacy and that awareness to have those conversations, right, within some of our leaders within the local government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we talk about things we can control the control about, the power of the pen or the emails and stuff within campus communities, within cities, within blocks and stuff like that. So when we're talking about how can we take about addressing is having these conversations and talking within those different organizations to say, hey, this is what we want, right? And things like that. And so that's just one of my opinions on that one.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like how you answered that. That's very helpful. And then another question is, can you tell us about learned helplessness?
Oh, learn helplessness. Okay. Right. So for some people, when we're talking about this learned helplessness, I'll try to do this thing, is where for some people, it kind of depends on, I say within maybe their kind of state and life and stuff like that, that they may have certain things that kind of go on, and then therefore they may kind of limit their help seeking kind of nature, right? And so within on some of these things, what we may kind of find and how I can even spin this into some of the stuff or some of our talks now, right? If we're going through the stress and we know with the stress or trauma or things that we've experienced, we may not see a way out within some of those situations, right? And so with that, because we don't see a way out because we're so distressed and we have these kind of blinds, we may not seek help. So there's maybe one side where we may have this learned helplessness where we may lose hope, but then at the same time about some of these talks we learn that there is a door, because what happens with depression and all that, that talks about frustrations. When I see people that are angry, right, because sometimes you may see people of color somebody coming in and they seem like they're easily irritated or angered or what have you, right? I don't see it as that. What we're really talking about is somebody who is sad. There's somebody who is going through things and is saying, do you understand me, Dr. Milton, when I'm talking with you?
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so those are the questions that came in, and I'm just looking at the chat. Someone said, I want to thank you, Dr. Milton. Our talks in Afghanistan is the reason I reached out for help. Oh,
Uh,
that's beautiful.
yeah, thank you. Yes, yes. So definitely thank y'all for, having me on here. Yasmin, you did.
Yes,
Thank
and
you. Right.
can I ask you one last
Yeah.
closing question?
Uh-huh.
Can you share like some sort of quote that really motivates you to keep doing all of this work that you're doing, or just some sort of phrase?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. Let me turn around here. Okay. I want y'all to remember this. Some of y'all may see this, right? You see this key, right? All right. So I want y'all to remember this. A lot of times when I'm working with my clients, I have a whole stack of keys in my office, and then I tell them to look at the keys and to choose one out, right? To pick a key out, and then when I give it to them, I tell them this story, right? This is what motivates me, and it's talking about being the gatekeeper of our of your own emotions. Because what we'll find is that for each and every one of us, we have our key and our gate or our door that has our emotions.
Mm.
Sometimes we are the gatekeeper of our emotions. Sometimes we don't even notice. We give our key to others. We give our key to other situations. We give our key to certain kind of things, social media, TV, and whatever like that, right? So usually as we go through that journey, as they're working with me, I work on helping them get their key back. Because sometimes we have to ask ourselves, especially dealing with others, who has my key? Do they rate my key? The answer is no, but we making you understand that, right? Because sometimes we'll find this that some people they'll give their key to family members or to parental figures or to partners and stuff like this, and not even notice that they don't even have they're not the master of their own kind of self on their key. So I work on getting your key back. So I want you to remember that one, okay? I'm gonna write a book on that one day, but yeah, that whole thing.
Yes. Wow. That is, I agree. It's powerful, as Sandra says, and a beautiful analogy. I I'm gonna need to process that. But thank you so much,
Yes,
Dr. Milton,
thank you. Yes.
for helping all of us with our keys, like all the lives that you're touching, and it's a ripple effect. And I can't wait to continue seeing what you do in the community. And thank you all for coming.
Yeah, definitely thanks. And like I said, y'all see my name up there. You know, that basic principle incorporated. If you have any questions or any kind of things like that, you know, reach out to Yasmin, reach out to me, and then you know I can help where we still we can. Okay.
Yes, thank
Hey,
you.
thanks.
Take
Okay.
care.
All right, see you later.
Bye.